Well, I'm going to do one more. I'll keep the haters on there for a little while. It just gets vicious and vicious and vicious. And it's the same one, spewing the same vitriol. I have talked to a couple prostitutes. I'm not a statistician, but certainly the research is out there. What do you think a woman's going to do when she's prevented from housing? We see this with runaway children. I talked to one woman. Her mother passed away. Imagine her mother passed away. She was a little girl. She was left on the street and she got into prostitution. And there are numerous stories like that. So if a woman doesn't have assets, and certainly one of those things is housing, certainly in domestic violence situations, we're seeing more and more women face homelessness, lack of housing. She's in a violent situation, and what happens? She doesn't have housing. Certainly, we notice the state of our family court system, children being taken away, children being trafficked. Who would have ever thought that children could be trafficked out of our family court system? What about vulnerable children in the juvenile facilities? We are just starting to look at that, and thank God we are making a little headway there with law enforcement. Thank God. Who would have ever thought that women were running prostitution rings out of our school districts, okay? And then you roll up into these cul-de-sacs and they're all like, oh, I'm not gonna say nothing. No, because you can look the other way and make money. If a woman or a child, this teacher was actually bringing little boys home and raping them in her own little fancy cul-de-sac, and nobody wanted to say anything to the press. Nobody wants to make a statement. Why is that? Because you can look the other way, make money, and you don't have to be directly involved, right? It's not a victimless crime. And certainly when there's no consent, when it involves children, when it involves force, coercion, and it doesn't have to look the way it does in a third world country. So please educate yourself. Okay, the whole idea of pretending to be your boyfriend doesn't look like a woman chained up. Even though it goes on in other countries, in third world countries, women can't even brush their hair, ride a bike, or walk down the street. It's getting so bad because men over here continue with this outright disgusting bullshit. And I would use more offensive terms, but then I'll get a little warning from YouTube. So just stop. It's disgusting. But I'm going to leave your comments there because everybody can see how disgusting this toxic masculinity. And then they'll scream about, they have the right to keep women as property and your objects and commodities and we still have to talk about this stuff. Because it doesn't look like it does. People think of prostitution. I certainly had those images, and other people have those stereotypes of the big pink Cadillac and the big fedora of the 70s, and it's certainly not that anymore. And I just did a perusal of Tater Tots and all these videos about what these two, and you know what? They'll go on and on. The first video I pulled up talking about how once they got wealthy, what would they do? Now, these are grown men, mind you. We're going to have a big house. We're going to have fancy cars. We're going to have the girls, okay? So we're not talking about a relationship or a marriage or a woman. We're talking about the girls. Oh, yes, we're going to have the girls. Lots of girls. Girls. These are grown adult men. How repugnant. The girls, yes. Girls are in the same line item as the house, the sports car, and then the girls. Another commodity, that's their idea of masculinity. It's pretty repugnant that's what you want to label healthy adult male masculinity. So just check yourself. And certainly when you're a landlord and you want to play these games, the frat boys over there, I went to frat boy parties when I went to college, and they were all the big smooth celebrities. Then they were bragging, they flipped houses all the time. Well, guess what? Your flipping days are over. It's a dump. And these are the kind of scams and criminal activity they're turning to while they tell you that the neighborhood's gone now. They're having trouble with revenue because St. Rose is gone. Well, guess what? All that wheeling and dealing, you haven't been maintaining your properties. Look around the Pine Hills. These houses that had a steady rental income and steady good tenants are now, you got to give back to the very community that you made a lot of money off of, and they don't want to. So they're going to resort to this kind of stuff. Yeah, it's an easy scam for them. They get you in there, they scam you, and they get upwards of $3,000 from you. Okay? Because you open a window and it crashes down because the windows are 30 years old. You should, as a landlord, a good landlord replaces a couple windows a year at the minimum. Okay, it's not a business to get rich quick, no money down, and we can get into that. It's certainly not a business like that. You're in the business of providing homes, making a safe space for people, certainly making sure the refrigerator, the washer works, certainly the smoke alarms, for God's sakes. People shouldn't be scrambling to try to get up on a ladder and figure out whether the smoke alarm works or whether it has a battery or what's going on. You go in as a landlord, you check certain things, you make sure everything's working. The person is giving you that money to move in, and barring a catastrophe or something major, everything should be okay. That's certainly not what's going on. These maintenance men want to go in and out of your apartment, pretend they're fixing things, nothing gets done, everything's a scam, and this is what the frat boys have decided to do now instead of doing what they're supposed to do, because I guess the celebrity lifestyle of the rich and famous isn't working out. And I see these guys all the time now. And certainly, they'll tell you how, oh my God, civilization is falling apart because the middle class can't continue this nonsense. And it is certainly, and I use more harsh words, but I don't want to get too far out there on this video. We're going a little older, so I want to keep it to certain, because there's a lot to talk about, certain, topics. Again, these are off the cuff. Again, your mileage may vary. If statistically speaking, you want to post some facts and some things, I'm more than welcome, because I have to educate myself and scramble in this kind of situation. I do have transferable skills, but of course, according to the frat boys, a lot of us are just whores and prostitutes. So we'll continue, and I certainly owned enough property that I shouldn't have to deal with these scammers, but exposing them is what we have to do, because our neighborhoods continue to be, there's no cohesion, they continue to fall apart, and these scammers are now turning to trafficking and other nefarious means to keep their lifestyle going, and it's a facade. Be safe.